if you want to play a little game, get a piece of paper and a pencil and turn off your device for a moment. We won't turn it off at this end, but you can do that. And write down on a piece of paper, what is something that you could do? Let's say you have a son or a daughter won't talk to me, and instead of telling yourself that they're an adolescent and they won't open up and, blaming them and saying they shouldn't be like that, but see if you can write down something that you, if you were the parent, might be doing, which coerces your son or daughter into not talking to you.
Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Barovsky, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Okay. Shut up, folks. Hello, Rhonda. And hello,
Hi.
Matt.
Oh, hey, David. Hey, Rhonda.
Hi, Matt. Hi, David. And welcome to everyone around the universe and galaxy. This is the Feeling Good podcast, and here is episode 409. So today is our third, or is it our fourth? It's our fourth episode on our philosophy podcasts. And today we're talking about, is the universe one? Is the universe real? I thought I would start today with some endorsements. We're starting this new YouTube channel, so you can see us on a video as well as listening to us. And a few people have listened and posted comments, and I thought it would be fun to read some of them. One person wrote, "I love you." One person wrote, "Gee, awesome new format, great new format, and love to see you together." And then someone wrote, "Rhonda, you seem to be chill. You seem like you'd be chill to smoke bongs with." Which is like, I'm not going to say if that's true or not. So, David, shall you start us off on our
sure.
conversation about?
We thank you for your kind comments on our new YouTube channel, and I've responded to all of them with the help of Teresa from our Feeling Great app team, and we just really appreciate your support, and we hope this will be a whole new dimension in our podcasting. Now, before you turn off your device, whatever it might be, because the topics for today seem kind of almost unbelievably boring, that we will actually make them quite vivid and real and hopefully emotional and some learning for you. But I'll give a brief description of these two philosophical problems. I love philosophy because I was a philosophy major in college. In fact, the philosophy of science specifically. And I've kind of gotten a kick out of philosophical problems, but they don't have much relevance unless we make them relevant. That's what we're going to really do for you today. But these two questions, one, is the universe real? And is the universe one? And when I first heard those as being philosophical problems that great thinkers had agonized about and obsessed about, I couldn't understand what's the big deal, because let's say, is the universe one? And I have a pen here in my hand, which you can see now that we're on video, and it seems to me that the pen and I are not one, because nobody has ever called me a pen. although they called me a lot of bad words, a lot of people have, they're probably right. And no one has ever looked at this pen and said, "Oh, hello, David." So we're clearly not one, and I couldn't figure out what it might mean. Although it later came to mean a tremendous amount in my clinical work, and we'll hear about that from Rhonda and Matt and David in just a minute. But as you all know, one of my favorite philosopher, in fact, my favorite philosopher was Wittgenstein. Not that everyone in the group today admires him the way I do, but he really wrote a book in 1951. After he died, it was published. It's called Philosophical Investigations, and many people claim that book contained the solution to all the problems in philosophy. And I read it. It took a long time to understand it, and when I finally understood it, I came to agree with that. But the way he would solve these problems would be to say he didn't solve them, but to dismiss them as kind of be meaningless. Like, what does it mean to say that the world is one? Like, is that as opposed to three or two, or what really are we talking about? And unless you can explain that you're talking about something, it's just kind of word salad, just kind of a nonsensical kind of thing. But once I got into my work in therapy, I saw the power of that metaphor that we're one on multiple levels, and here's where we can maybe bring it to life and get Rhonda's input and Matt's input. But for example, I began to notice that when I'm working with patients, the thing I want most is to bring them from being very upset at the start of a session to having great joy at the end of the session. And I'm grateful to have TEAM because I can often, in fact nearly always, make that happen if I have a 2-hour session, which is what I always use. And when the patient goes into a state of joyous enlightenment, that's really what I'm aiming for. I'm not aiming for just to get someone a little less depressed, but really to catapult them into a different realm of experiencing themselves and the world. And when they go into enlightenment, it puts me into enlightenment. And so we're in that idea that we're one. And I said, wow, that kind of makes sense. And then I've had sessions where I said something that hurt someone's feelings. And boy, if I've had a session and the patient goes out feeling bad or angry with me, it's like I've been kicked in the stomach myself or shot with a cannon in the stomach or something like that, and it's terribly painful. And so that idea that we suffer together as well. And I started to notice that when I'm at odds with friends or with loved ones, that we kind of suffer together, and that when we resolve that issue, we kind of find our way into heaven and joy and love together. But there's another way in which the universe is one, has found its way into our work with people with troubled relationships, and I've got an exercise that we can do that might be kind of fun. But let's hear from Rhonda and Matt first, and see can you relate this the world is one to any of your clinical work or personal experiences.
Okay, Matt, you go.
Me first? Yeah, I mean, so I agree with you, David, entirely that it's a confusing question. I don't know what they're talking about really when they're asking is the universe real or is it one? But But I've also had that same experience as you, that if I'm working with a patient and they get better and they recover and they go into an enlightened state, that I go along right there with them. And it's really awesome. And similarly, if I fail with a patient, if I hurt their feelings, then I feel really crummy right along with
How
them.
often does that happen,
Seems like
Matt? I can't imagine that happening to you more than once a year or something.
It's rare, but it does still happen.
Yeah.
I still make mistakes, unlike the app. We'll have a bad day, and yeah, it does seem to me that our ships rise and fall together in the tide, and the universe is one in that way.
Great. Yeah. You want to add to that, Rhonda? You don't feel compelled to, because we got plenty of stuff to say about this.
Well, you guys are on a completely different plane than me. So I had to look up.
Is it
I had to
Southwest
Google.
Airlines or United? Well, no, it's United Airlines. That's the one, the
Yeah.
United.
No, Southwest, so you can go on anytime you want. So I started to think about baby. I don't know if this is like so off, you can tell me, but I started thinking about how when infants are born and they don't really know that they're separate human beings, they think they're one with their mother until that, they don't really separate and until they're about 6 to 9 months. And I started to think about, are they really one because that it's perhaps how the infant is perceiving it, or are they two separate? I mean, obviously they're two separate, but that was just kind of an interesting concept to me. So then I also looked up the Buddhists. Do Buddhists believe that the universe is one? And so if this is the responses, the Buddhists believe that the universe is eternal and cyclical and constantly changing without a beginning or an end, and that the world is interconnected and interdependent, and here's the relevant part, that nothing can exist independently because the world is a flow of events that are linked together.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful Buddhist teaching. In fact, I've read that the Buddhists believe that the meaning of evil is not understanding that the world is one. Because then you think that you're separate from others, that from an external reality, and then you can exploit that and use it to your own advantage and make yourself happy by making others suffer. And that's how evil comes into existence. And of course, we see that now, that like this summer, all these heat waves that we're moving into and the fires that are starting to burn. And even my wife and I feel here in our house, we're next to a hill with a lot of trees, and that we feel really in danger. And that as humans, we've been ignoring the environment and thinking we can just, exploit it and burn oil and put all this crap into the air and get away from it. So that's another dimension on which the world is one, is perhaps a way of looking at things that can keep us all alive. So I love what you're saying, and I'm sure that you as a mother, having a baby in your arms, that must feel like a very beautiful feeling.
Yeah, it is.
And
I imagine the baby is feeling that comfort and closeness too.
Yeah, and this is kind of tied in with that. Do we have a self that we were talking about a couple podcasts back? Because if you think you have a self, that again is thinking you have some separate thing from other people and other selves. Well, that sounded kind of bullshitty, didn't it? But, for a moment there, it seemed kind of cool. But I have an exercise for us to do on the interpersonal model, because that's where that the world is one, we're one with other people, really takes on a powerful and peculiar persona. Boy, that sounded impressive. But essentially, when people come for individual therapy, and then they start talking about somebody they're not getting along with, they generally, I'd say 80% of the time at least, see it as the other person's fault. and they say that person is doing something to me, they have bad behavior. And so we kind of feel like victims and we feel morally superior in that mindset. And the research I've done on, what are the variables that are associated in a causal way with conflicted relationships, blame is the thing that stands out in the number one position. And there isn't anything in the number two position. It's really massively important. And the kind of interpersonal therapy we do, like when we use the relationship journal, we have to explain to people, if you want help with your relationship with your son or your wife or your husband or your partner or whoever, I have to warn you that you'd have to give up blaming that other person and examine your own role in the conflict. And I have this tool here called the Relationship Journal, and it'll take us 10 or 15 minutes, and you will suddenly see for the first time that you're causing the very problem you're complaining about. And when you see that, it may be too much for you, it may be too humiliating, too shocking. If you have the courage to and the curiosity to endure that, we can use this tool. And if you can allow yourself to see your role in the problem, it will be horribly painful for you in all likelihood, but at the same time, it will empower you to change it, because if you've got the power to be causing a problem with someone else, and you suddenly see what you're doing and how you're doing it, then you have the power to respond differently using what we call the 5 secrets of effective communication, and radically transform the nature of that relationship and transform it from hostility and mistrust and blame and bitterness on both sides to warmth and joy and lightness. But just to make this practical for the purpose of the podcast, I've made a list of 2, 4, 6, 7 complaints that people often have about others. And it could be your son, your husband, your wife, your partner, a friend, a family member. And what I'm going to do, and we'll play a little game here, and I'll read one of these complaints. And the first one is going to be my so-and-so won't talk to me, refuses to talk to me. And that could be like your son or daughter, for example. And if you want to play a little game, get a piece of paper and a pencil and turn off your device for a moment. We won't turn it off at this end, but you can do that. And write down on a piece of paper, what is something that you could do? Let's say you have a son or a daughter won't talk to me, and instead of telling yourself that they're an adolescent and they won't open up and, blaming them and saying they shouldn't be like that, but see if you can write down something that you, if you were the parent, might be doing, which coerces your son or daughter into not talking to you. Instead of blaming them and pressuring them, go the other direction. See, how are you causing this result? And then once you've jotted something down on a piece of paper, you can turn your device back on, and we'll see what Matt thinks and what Rhonda thinks. And then if you like this, we'll do the other 2, 4, 6 of them as well. And the idea is that this can be kind of a fun game, but maybe if you have someone that you're not getting along with and you want to get along with them better, and you have some complaint about them, maybe you can use this same method to begin to think about what you're doing that forces the other person to be like that. So what can you do to force your son or daughter to refuse to open up and talk to you and tell you what's going on? So turn it off now. You just turned it back on. How cool. I'm just kind of bullshitting, but I'm trying to make this seem fun and realistic. Now let's see what our two experts, Rhonda and Matt, think about this one. What does one of you want to go first? How could we behave toward our son or daughter that would make them be unwilling to and not wanting to talk to us?
I can actually think of a lot of them. Do you want to go back and forth and do one or two, and I'll do one or two, Matt?
Sure, yeah. I think, well, I guess maybe it's sort of the opposite of what causes people to talk to us, which is to be curious and interested in them, and to be admiring of them. And so if we're not doing that, if we're not asking questions and trying to understand their point of view and admiring them, but instead we're trying to control them or make them change, or force our opinion on them, or criticizing them, that will probably cause them to feel hopeless and defeated and like there's no point talking to us.
Beautiful. I think one is enough. Let's hear your.
Oh, was that just?
No, I mean, I was imagining all the times when one of my sons wouldn't talk to me.
Okay.
And it's because I had been critical of them, or, especially since they became, teenagers and into adulthood, they set boundaries, and I, in some way, violated the boundary. I didn't respect them or what they were asking of me, or I talked over them, or I didn't protect them some way. I wasn't listening to them. Then they withdrew and backed off.
Right. Okay. Beautiful. I love your answers, and of course it's easy to see it with this exercise, and that's why this exercise is good, because it's not terribly personal. It's so painful when it's something that you're actually doing right now, and struggling with someone that hurts. Hurts a little bit, I think, as you discovered on our Sunday hike. You were so courageous, Rhonda. Now, our last question here. Let's say you have a son or daughter who refuses to talk to you, and you're pretty sure they're upset about something. And what could you say if you wanted to reverse this pattern? You don't have to come up with something, but if you have some ideas about what could you say? How could you use the 5 secrets, the disarming technique, thought and feeling, empathy, and stroking, and all of that good stuff? Anyone want to take a stab at
You
it?
want me to go first, Matt?
Sure, I can. I often reach for multiple choice empathy. If I imagine I'm in a conflict with someone and they've kind of run off and locked themselves in their room or something like that.
Great communication skills. They're talking to you and then they run off.
Yeah.
Unlock the door.
I think I might have said something incorrect, and then I might acknowledge that to them and say, I feel badly, I feel guilty because I think I was pretty critical and rude and mean just a moment ago, and I'm imagining that you're feeling, I don't know, but probably pissed off and angry at me, and maybe hurt, and maybe afraid even to interact with me, or hopeless about our connection, just dreading our interactions. I'm curious what you're feeling and what that was like for you.
Let you and I can grade it and say what we thought about that. What did you think about that, Rhonda?
I think Matt is a master at the 5 secrets. I thought it was really lovely.
I missed stroking.
You missed stroking? Uh-huh. I have to admit I'm embarrassed. I was writing down my own 5 secrets.
Oh, I see. Well, you give us yours then, and then
let me hear you. You can give Matt feedback.
I thought it was great. I gave it an A. If I were to add something to it, I might even spell it out and say to them, I've been trying to ask myself why you're unwilling to talk to me. And I kind of come to the conclusion that that's my fault because I haven't been a good listener. I haven't been probably worth talking to because when you say things, I argue, I contradict you, I try to force my ideas or tell you what to do and what not to do. And I could just imagine how hurtful that is for you and how painful that is. And I want you to know that right now I'm feeling kind of ashamed because I love you so much. And all this time I've been thinking you should open up and talk to me, and now I'm saying it's actually my fault. And I'm not going to ask you to talk right now, but I'm just wondering if you could let me know with a nod of the head or something. Is what I'm saying making sense? Are you feeling hurt and angry and frustrated with me? How was that?
That was great.
A plus plus.
A plus plus.
And then what would be the idea behind it? Why would it be a good response?
I mean, I like that you said, I'm going to ask you, but don't answer now. Just nod your head.
Yeah.
So that you're not forcing them to do anything that you don't want them,
Yeah.
that they clearly are not wanting to do right now.
And the law of opposites is like, and this is a religious thing we talked about on a previous podcast. When you blame another person, you condemn yourself. It's kind of a spiritual notion. And and I also call it the law of opposites. But when I'm taking the blame, does that make me look guilty?
No, it makes you look humble.
Yeah, and that's
and warm. Actually,
that's a neat thing. Well, we might not have time to go through all of these, but let's take one. Well, how about have any of you ever had a friend who, or loved one, or a family member who whines and complains and won't listen to your good advice? Raise your hand if you have known some whiner or complainer. Okay, I see a lot of hands going up. Actually, just one, my own. Oh, two, yeah. And then how could we force someone to be a whiner and a complainer? And then we'll go on to the other topic, maybe. But I just find these kind of fun and fascinating. And so turn off your listening device, take your piece of paper and write down, how could we force somebody to be a whiner and a complainer and to continue to ignore your advice and your attempts to help them? Okay, so are you guys ready with an idea?
I'm ready.
Okay, we're going to give you first shot at it,
okay.
Rhonda.
If I'm being really pushy and overbearing and I'm not listening and I'm giving advice that wasn't asked for.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. What did you say, Matt?
I liked Rhonda's. I had a that I ignore the validity of their complaints.
Oh.
I don't acknowledge their suffering or their feelings, but I try to help and fix.
Mm-hmm. Right. Trying to help somebody is the cause of their complaining. And why is that? Are they not looking for help?
They may not have asked for help. They may just want to be understood and heard.
Yeah, so that's what they're asking for. And so you can instantly cause a whiner or complainer. And those are labels. They're kind of insulting, but I'm just trying to get the idea across. But there's a way you can pretty much have almost 100% success rate and instantly getting them to stop whining and complaining. Should we model how to do that? By responding to them differently. Do you want me to be the whiner and complainer, or would one of you want to be the whiner and complainer?
I want you to be the whiner and complainer.
Okay. Let me get in a whiny mood. I'm getting older now, and I've got this low back pain. Like, so on the Sunday hikes, I can barely make 2 miles, and it's kind of like a pain in the ass, but it's more a pain in the back. And then, you know, a lot of people, they don't listen to me. And they just go on treating people in the way they've always treated people, with some kind of codependent relationship where they don't make the patients accountable. And it just ticks me off, because that never is effective. And they just get into these long-term codependent relationships and maybe giving out prescriptions or whatever. And then they're so proud of their therapeutic relationship, and they're not measuring anything, and you know darn well that the patient is as depressed today as the first day, and as angry as the first day they came to them. And why are people so naive and set in their own stupid ideas about things, fancying themselves to be so wonderful, when they're really just kind of giving into, you know, codependency? I'm going to rescue this person and crap like that. How was that?
That was a good line.
What do you think I should do?
David, that sounds so upsetting that people aren't listening to you and they're not following your advice. I can really understand your anger and your upsetness. Can you tell me more about what that's like for you when people don't follow your advice? I mean, I personally think you have the best advice in the universe, but what's it like for you when other people don't share that opinion?
Great. Now, how would you guys grade Rhonda's response?
I would give it a B plus.
A B plus, okay.
Okay.
And then
I thought there was more to say about your back pain and how hard it is, and
oh yeah, add that.
Yeah. Yeah. I dropped that off.
Matt.
Add that.
Matt can add that part.
Yeah, David, I'm feeling for you, because I know how important in your exercise and walking. You love to get out. You were a runner for many years, and it seems so unfair that you would have back pain that would limit you and limit the fun that you're having. You've always taken such good care of yourself. I'm kind of pissed off. I can imagine you'd be feeling really frustrated with that experience.
I like you, Matt. I like you, Rhonda, and it's not so bad. and that was how you do it. We made that look easy, but something inside of you has to change. You know, if you want to change the way you relate to people, and you have to give up this idea of you know, changing the other person, or blaming them, and begin to look at what you're doing and how it impacts the other person. It's a beautiful thing to learn, what you guys just demonstrated. Most of the time when people are upset, they just want someone to listen and find truth in what they're saying, and not try to save them or help them or solve some kind of problem, just to be there with them. And I call it the zero technique, because you give the other person zero, you give them nothing. But at the same time, you're giving them everything, because that's what they really want, is some caring and understanding. So you give them zero, but you zero in on what they're telling you, and support them, and find truth in what they're saying, and acknowledge their feelings. Well, if you're interested, we could do more of these on another podcast, but you might.
You know, David, can I just,
Yeah.
I love the zero technique.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, in the Wednesday group, we've taught it a lot.
Oh, have you?
And it's really, really hard for therapists to learn
Oh,
the zero
isn't it?
technique.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Right. Yeah.
It's hard to add zero. It's hard not to interpret. It's hard not to
Yeah.
give advice or to give your
Yeah,
opinions.
that's right. And it just in the empathy phase, even if the person isn't a whiner or complainer, therapists give in, and they start giving an advice. And you said another thing, they make interpretations. And that is virtually always ineffective and often irritating. And why, Rhonda, do therapists do that? Well, parents do that too, but why do trained mental health professionals do that?
You know, my guess is that it's kind of, you know, that's how they were trained when they were in graduate school, to make interpretations. And if I take that a step further, I think when you make an interpretation, you feel really smart and superior.
Yeah. exactly.
And it feels really
So
good. Oh, I know why you're doing
yeah,
that. It's
yeah,
because your mother.
yeah. It's
Da, 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 da,
ego.
da.
You're trying to impress them, and the
Yeah.
odd thing is that it has the the exact opposite effect. And Matt, I think that's you're so tremendously admired by. I've never talked to anyone who didn't tremendously admire you, especially your mother.
She likes my
Yeah,
hair.
but you're very humble and supportive of other people, and that paradoxically makes you so esteemed and valued in the eyes
Well, David,
of
thank
other
you.
people. Uh,
I feel all warm and kind of gooey.
yeah, yeah,
Very
right.
loved.
You're sort
Thank
of
you.
Yeah.
melting.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, here's the list of the other complaints I'd written down in case you want to hear us work on them in a future episode. Maybe you know someone who can't express his feelings, like my husband can't express his feelings. Well, what would you be doing to force him not to express his feelings? Or you know someone who always has to be right, and they're always arguing and always having to be right. And Matt, I know you and I have never gotten into that, but you may have gotten
Speak for yourself,
into
David.
that with someone. And how could you force someone to always have to be right and always arguing? And then you may know someone who won't listen to you. That's really irritating, and a common complaint is my husband doesn't listen, my wife doesn't listen, or my parents don't listen. Well, what could you do to force people not to listen to you? And you may know someone who's always critical of you. How many of you know someone who's just always criticizing you and saying things that aren't even entirely true or fair? Well, how could you force someone to be critical of you all the time? Or maybe you know someone who's very stubborn. They always have to get their way. Well, what could you do to force somebody to always have to get their way? And then finally, and this is just a partial list because there's more, but I just jotted this down before the show. Maybe you know someone who doesn't treat you with respect, and so you're kind of pissed off because someone treats you in a dismissive manner. What could you do to force someone to treat you with disrespect? And then once you find the answers, how you're doing it, then you can take the second issue, which is how could you respond to that person in a radically different way to get a radically different response. So this has been our presentation on is the universe one? And if you view it as being one, and if we view ourselves as being one with others, it can be extremely powerful, particularly when it comes to human relationships. The idea that the other person's to blame and we're the victim and they're doing something. Well, of course, there's always truth. The other person always is screwing up. We all screw up as human beings. But when you decide that you're the victim and the other person is the predator or the one who's to blame, that mindset, it's very hard to reconcile that with developing a loving or respectful relationship. And I hate it when I have to look at my own role in a problem. But when I finally give in and do that, it becomes pretty obvious how I've been causing the problem. And if I can swallow my pride and talk that over with the other person, it nearly always leads to the development of a far more loving relationship.
I think that there could still be a little bit of a mystery, like how does the exercise that we just did answer the question, is the universe one? Or
Sure. Yeah, good point. Let's point that out, and then we can draw this one to a close. And what do you guys have?
Can I also say, just in response to what you said about how we force people to treat us a certain way, can I also add that in situations where someone is like truly in a violent, dangerous relationship, our goal is to keep, as a therapist, is to have them be safe and get out of a place get out of a relationship if that's physically harmful to them. And then we're not saying that someone is doing anything to cause someone to beat them or harm
Yeah,
them that
like
way.
if you're living with someone who is a intravenous methadone addict and drug dealer, carrying guns and getting into violent altercations with you and with other people, that might not be a situation where you can use the 5 secrets to turn them into a sweet, loving lamb. And working with someone to get you to a position of safety would be very important. So we never want to ignore anything that's important. And in that situation, would the use of the 5 secrets be more or less important?
Well, the use of the 5 secrets would be extremely important.
Why?
So that,
He's a violent guy, and I told him I'm leaving him. Isn't that good enough?
well, I think there's a way to communicate so that, I hate to use this word, but I'm going to use this word anyway, so that more violence is not provoked,
Right.
but the situation is is calmer,
Yeah.
which would make it more safe for you then to leave the
Yeah, and
relationship
we've had a lot of
and put
examples,
together a
and
safety
I won't
plan.
repeat all of them on this podcast, but people who have been kidnapped by serial killers and use the 5 secrets that save their life. Or I had that altercation with violent teenagers who had this big truck type of thing and were shouting at me and threatening me, and the 5 secrets really transformed the situation. You can't always win that game. I remember being in Highland Hospital emergency room because I had to work there before we moved back to California from Philadelphia, because I had to get my California medical license back. So I worked there in the emergency room for the year before we moved back so I could try to relearn medicine. And because I'd been practicing for 20 years there and hadn't done any medicine at all, it was all psychiatry and psychotherapy. And it was hard for me, and I always felt very inadequate in the emergency room. They gave me a badge that said David Burns, MD, attending / medical student. That was the title they gave me for that year, and it was very, very valid. But I remember every now and then I tried to show my stuff, like the secrets, and teach that. So I would be a total Gomer there in the emergency room with no skills. And I remember they brought this fellow in once on a gurney, and he was one of the,
People know what Gomer is.
well, a Gomer is just kind of an idiot, kind of a lame, silly, foolish person. And the medical students were more up on medicine than I was. And, I was on the faculty, so it was kind of awkward. But at any rate, this fellow came in on a gurney, and he was in leather restraints. And he was extremely violent, and he was spitting at people and trying to bite people, and he was screaming at the top of his lungs.
This is how David and I met.
Yes, that's right. And so I thought, oh, this is a great chance to impress them. So I imagined I'd go up and start using the disarming technique with them, and the 5 secrets of effective communication, and provide a miracle before their very eyes, and they'd be mesmerized and flooded with admiration. And I went up to him and I said something, using the disarming technique and feeling empathy. And he looked at me and he lashed at me with his head, trying to bite me. And then he looked at me and started spitting on me and screaming at the top of his lungs. And they were all watching, and I turned around and said, tighten the leather restraints. So it doesn't always work, but it usually is pretty damn effective.
Yeah, that's a good story. Okay,
I
back
have
to
this
you.
this visual image that helps me understand the 5 secrets and the what we're talking about, the oneness in a relationship. And it's basically like 2 supercomputers. If you imagine people as these wildly complicated devices, and my output becomes your input, and then it causes you to give me this output, and that becomes my input, and so it's a circle.
That's right.
And so it's all connected in that way.
Circular causality.
Circular causality.
Not one-way causality.
Right. And there's a great message of hope in that too, which is that just even one person can decide to be the person who changes the output
Yes.
that they're offering. And then that often, not always, but often changes the other
Yeah,
person.
if you genuinely change with humility, and it's not just some fake attempt to manipulate the other person, it's almost impossible that the other person won't change at the very moment you change. And it's very fashionable to say you can't change other people. Have you ever heard that?
Absolutely.
And what I always say is you can always change other people. You can never not change other people. You're changing other people at every minute of every interaction with every person you interact with. It's just that you might be changing them in a very negative and unpleasant way. And but anyway, that's what the whole interpersonal model is about. Any other final words here before we close up shop for today?
Well, I'm glad you made that link, Matt, to the circular causality, that your output is my input and my input is your output.
Yeah.
Did I say that right? That does make it more clear. The oneness of us
Someone
all.
explained it to me once in terms of punctuation, that when you're in a relationship conflict, you're punctuating something the wrong way. You're always saying, well, I said this and then they said that, and isn't that unreasonable of them, type of thing. So you're, but instead, if you say, what did they say, and then how did you respond? Then you can examine your own role and see the impact of that response on the other person and what it's going to cause, how cause them to react to you, and that's where you can really understand this whole issue of circular causality, and that the universe is one. And so here, little Pan, David, Guy, I'll give you a kiss because we're one.
And that's a good note to end the podcast on.
Okay.
That was great.
And we'll see you all soon, and thank you so much. And those of you who wrote in some responses to our first and second video podcast, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support. Send us your questions, your comments. If you want a podcast on a certain topic or whatever, we love that. So, and have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, we have to do our wink, Rhonda. We can get Matt to do it with us, huh?